How is it going, guys? It's Nutshell here, and today we have an important topic to talk about, and that is something that you probably already know about if you've been playing the game, but I want to talk about how Tarkov and its developer BSG always seem to take it a step too far when it comes to balancing out certain items and certain things within the game. And for those of you wondering, we're talking about the loot nerf that has been applied to all of the maps, at least currently within the game. So every single raid that you did previous to this patch would have far more spawns that you're able to farm up during the raid. However, since then, we've essentially seen a lot of reductions in how many essentially items you're going to find in those raids, which is a big problem when it comes to trying to do what you want to do at the end of the day. And this is probably something that BSG have been wanting to do because people are earning too much money. But rather than, nerf some of the most overpowered loot runs and certain aspects about the game, such as the rusted loot run key and stuff like that, as well as, some of the runs on streets and that sort of thing where you could make ludicrous amounts of money, or maybe even some of the dorms marked room keys and the marked room keys in general, which were giving out a ton of key cards. Rather than just specifically nerf those, BSG decided, let's nerf everything. And this is probably one of the biggest problems with why it is so frustrating to play Tarkov sometimes, because rather than doing what they should have done, they decide to do what they didn't need to do, and that is nerf everything. And although there are some issues, and for those of you who don't know and you haven't seen yesterday's videos, there are still some bugs within PVE mode, even though Tarkov tried to essentially remove them from the game, which is a net benefit. Removing these bugs is going to be a good thing in the long term, provided the fact that they're not actually supposed to be implemented into the game as it currently stands, which is why it's a problem, and not everyone has that option or ability to do it, because it's only really people that watch videos on the internet or have somehow managed to find out themselves who will know about these bugs. It really is a bit of a pain for pretty much anyone that's playing the game now, is that you basically get less loot, and the whole point about the raid system and playing solo Tarkov and stuff like that is to be able to loot what you want to loot. And in doing that, they've also essentially, by what I've seen, nerfed the amount of XP that you get in your raids. Not guaranteed that that is the case, but it seems like that may have been done, as well as the fact that we've also seen essentially some problems when it comes to balancing certain aspects of the flea market, whereby we're still seeing military power filters like in the millions. I'm talking I think they were up at like 20 million, which is a complete misplay by anyone that actually gets a military power filter, by the way, because for those of you wondering, the flea market does have an upper price, at which point it becomes negative to increase the price of said power filter. So if you have a look, someone's listed it for 7 million right here, but if you list it for 20 million, you actually pay more in the market commission, and so you end up earning less because you've paid even more market commission than you could have made when you sold it for 10 million. And so 10 million is the sweet spot for a power filter. And for the kind of those of you wondering, this is the case for a lot of the high tier items, which has been going crazy. And so nerfing the spawn rate has only meant that those high tier items are even rarer, and so finding them in the raids is even worse. And when you couple this with the fact that BSG consistently seem to fail with these patches to some of the core and really game-breaking exploits, such as the ability to go in with no AI whatsoever, it really feels like a bit of a backhand. And yeah, like I said, it should have been a nerf to what the most overpowered methods of making money in their eyes were in the game. And so for me, of course, this is going to drive prices up on the flea, I would assume, because there's less loot to go around. You're coming out with less loot in general, and therefore you're going to find that certain items are going to start going up in price slightly, especially considering that they are trying to get rid of the latest kind of a bug where you can go in with no AI. When that goes, eventually it's going to go even higher, and because of the fact that the loot itself is less rare or rarer, then you're not going to have as much supply on the market, and the demand is probably going to be the same. And of course, with the release of PvE to everyone coming somewhat soon within the game, this is only going to get worse because of course all of the low tier items are going to get in super demand, and so they're going to go up in price as well. We'll cover a video on this in specific as we go later on down the week, and of course then you can start preparing, because it seems like PvE mode will be available for purchase for everyone in about a week, I would assume. Now they said 2 weeks after the release, or 1 to 2 weeks after the release of the latest update with local raids, they would open it up to everyone to purchase the PvE mode and play the PvE mode regardless of this thing. But in the current state that it's at right now, it feels like it's probably not a good idea. And although I'm coming from the standpoint of someone that can play, I'm trying to, as an experience, the actual experience of playing right now is pretty shoddy, and so for the recommendation to those of you wondering, should I buy PvE, I would maybe, well, it depends. Yes, if you really want to play PvE, absolutely, but if you're on the fence, I would say no, wait until this mode has been solidly out for a little bit longer, when BSG have made some more patches, and when the game feels more like a full product, as opposed to, you know, charging you probably £40 or something ridiculous like this for essentially the same game but with AI. Yeah, I feel like this is going to be the thing, and yeah, it just feels like it's not a true product that should actually be bought, so make of that what you will. Of course, the game is still fun, it's still cool. It's a nice little more casual experience. It's not too difficult for those of you that play a lot of PvP, but it's still a challenge for some people, and it's more challenging than I originally thought, having come from a lot of PvP to PvE mode. It was more challenging than I initially anticipated, just because of how the AI actually works on the PMCs. Yeah, it's a lot different to what you would expect from something like a scav, but once you learn the mechanics, it's really not too difficult. It just requires a lot of play, and I'm sure most casual players of the game will also learn this and find it a lot easier in the end anyway, and it's a great learning experience playing the mode. However, we can't just kind of give that credit to BSG. That is just how the mode works, and unfortunately, with all of the things going on right now, it just really is a bit upsetting to see how this game is kind of gone, especially considering how good it was previously before any of these updates to the local servers. It just felt like they ruined the actual experience of the game, for me anyway. By the way, this is just my opinion. I'm not trying to convey my opinion as fact, as many people like to believe that content creators on the internet do. I'm sure some of them do, but I'm just saying this is from my experience. So I thought I'd put that in there before someone says you're trying to convey your opinion as fact or whatever. No, I'm not. This is just what I believe. So with that being said, yeah, I think that the game mode's good, but it definitely has its issues. And when you combine that with the fact that now we somewhat feel like the actual AI itself is still broken, the game is still not perfect. The AI itself, although being quite easy to actually take out when it comes to PMCs, when they're in kind of corridors, or when they're in a predictable location, or when they're kind of, I guess, in a building, for example, it's much different when they're outside, because essentially they have like laser aim, and the longer they're aggroed towards you, the better their aim will be, but much quicker than with a scav, for example. And this is a real problem, because if you're running across an open field or something like that, or, you know, that might be a bad example because maybe you shouldn't run through an open field, but say you're running in the tree line and someone aggroes you, and then it takes you a while to actually find out where they are, and then by that time they have like laser accuracy, so as soon as you poke, they are basically hitting you, and that is really not a great experience, combine that with the fact that they now run towards you when they're kind of in an area and they'll push you really hard, and because they've already aggroed you, it can lead to some very unbalanced, unrealistic gameplay that I feel like is it just doesn't seem to work very well. And I'm sure many of you have experienced at least some conditions of this. I'm not saying that the game is difficult for me personally, but I can see why it would be an issue for quite a few people who don't have hours and hours and hours every single week to actually play through, which is where the whole being able to actually play with a practice mode and being able to essentially use the game how you want to suit it. A lot of people trying to convey that their opinion is the correct one, that you should play it as tough as it can be, or you should play as easy as it can be, or it should be exactly how Tarkov is. Well, yeah, maybe for you, but don't forget that some people might not be as good as you, might want to play a more casual experience, might actually want the game to be super difficult because they're better than you. But a lot of these people who are conveying that people should play exactly how the game is, well, that's not necessarily true for a solo player experience within the game. And certainly if you're playing in a group, it should be a standard kind of one size fits all, I guess. Or maybe even then, maybe it isn't, and you can have to choose the settings before you go in with your mates. Maybe that's a better system of doing it. But the kind of vast majority of people will probably like the fact that you could make it easier, you could make it harder. I personally would love to make it harder every single raid and just play with a more hard mode-esque sort of thing. But I'm sure there's lots of people that would like to take it a little bit more casually so they can play music and play Tarkov at the same time without having too much of an issue. And yeah, that might sound stupid to be playing a hardcore survival with a music, but then again, you know, some people might want to do that, so giving them the option is of course the best thing to do. Options are always, in my opinion, the best way to go to please as many people as possible. And yeah, I don't see why anyone could disagree, at least from my standpoint, with giving people the option to play how they want to, provided it doesn't impact anyone else, which is where a found in raid system, whereby if you go into a raid with different settings, you would get either loot that isn't as valuable, or maybe you would get settings that is more valuable if it's harder, that you put on a harder game mode, or maybe less valuable if you go in, or less spawns if you go in on an easier difficulty. Therefore, you know, you risk it for going in for a harder raid and making it easier if you're going in, and you'll get less loot, which solves the whole flea market problem with the whole issues that are coming out right now, because it's not built around that sort of system. It is just a case of the loot is the exact same whether you play with no AI or as it currently stands in the base game where you're not actually using the no AI glitch within the game. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I would definitely like to see that actually in the game, but implemented in a way that isn't like it's not supposed to be implemented into the game. So with that being said, I've just wanted this video not to talk specifically about the fact that the loot has been nerfed or anything like this, but to talk about the Tarkov mode itself, and hopefully you get an idea as to what my opinions are. But I'm really interested to see everyone's opinions on what they think the game mode is actually like, and you might not agree with me, you may completely disagree with me entirely, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to get offended by you having a different opinion. Equally, if you do agree, then let me know as well, because it's just an interesting kind of way to see exactly what everyone's thinking, what sort of content that you guys actually want as well, because at the end of the day, I make videos for you in particular, and that's the key thing about the whole channel. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you'll see this video right here which talks about this latest bug within the game. So if you want to see about how the people are going in with no AI and doing that sort of thing, then it is on screen right now, and I hope you join me in that one, and I'll see you in the next one coming soon. Goodbye.